Cost of living, number one issue, regardless of whether the politicians want to talk about it or not, and it is the single biggest broken promise of this new government. A third of their way through power, quote, a Labor government will lower the cost of living. I say it every night because that was their central promise, but everything's got a whole lot worse. But interestingly, their politics around trying to blame only one part of economic management for the problems in the country, well, it's paying a form of dividends. Despite the fact that, according to a poll today, 44% of people believe that the greatest responsibility for keeping inflation down is the federal government, not the Reserve Bank, apparently the majority of people believe it's time for somebody else to run the Reserve Bank. This is the Labor Party line, so I repeat, most people think it's the federal government that is responsible, but when it comes to doing something about it, you don't change the government, you don't change the treasurer, no, you change the Reserve Bank head. Yeah, despite the fact now that almost half of all people believe the number one issue when it comes to federal politics is cost of living, guess which political party apparently is the one that you can trust to deal with the cost of living? The one that has failed to actually deliver the drop in cost of living. Now, of course, I understand that there's not a lot of residual goodwill for the former government. I understand that we're not talking about the Howard era here, but this is an extraordinary thing. That Australians recognise the number one issue is the issue that this government has failed to answer, yet the biggest proportion of voters say that the party that promised and has failed is still the one they trust to deal when it comes to cost of living. Now, this is the challenge for any party but the Labor Party. It's not good enough just to point to the problem, you have to start to have solutions. Otherwise, you'll end up in exactly the same scenario that the Republicans did ahead of that big red wave that never turned up. It's one thing to constantly define what a problem is, but until you can tell us what the solution to it is, and you build up the trust for people to have belief that you will be able to deliver what other politicians can't, then the people who are doing the harm get to continue doing the harm because they get to say, we're better than the other guys. But then, of course, when it comes to power, we know that that's getting worse and worse. Why? Because we are now paying for the transition from one thing to another. As we showed you, the coal price, the fuel price is down from the highs of the past few months, but guess what keeps going up? Power and power. And of course, the decision made by this government was to sign up to even more renewables, which made Twitter very happy. But as Chris Kenny and others have shown you, where these renewables are actually being put is starting to cause a problem right now. Basically, great power, just not where you want to put it, be it offshore in Victoria, offshore in New South Wales, or in the ridges of Queensland, let alone places like Mudgee, which of course are just getting some of the 22,000 solar panels which are needed every single day between now and 2030. Well, guess what? Even more power price problems to come. Let's go to New South Wales now. We're covering the whole country, don't I? $407 is what you can expect as an increase in your power bills. And if you're in small business, you can expect an extra $590 here. But again, going back to that central problem of do they trust the opposition to be able to come up with answers to the problems that have been caused by this government? Well, the answer is currently no. Why? Because according to the recent Resolve poll, it is 32 apiece in terms of primary vote. That is obviously death for the Liberal Party, but together with the Greens, that's how they're able to get the Labor Party back into power, but no surge for the Labor Party. One Nation, others and undecided are all still there. Interestingly, when you have a look state by state about where there's been a little bit of movement, the LNP slightly back up, but only 33 to 39 in New South Wales. In Queensland, it's 38 to 31, basically the same. But in Victoria, the LNP, the Liberal Party, now has a primary vote, thanks to that idiot who's running the Victorian Liberal Party, 25%. That is extraordinary.